121 degrees. That is not a number from a science fiction desert planet, and it is not an exaggeration pulled from a headline for shock value. It is a real air temperature reading recorded on American soil this year, hot enough to make asphalt soft underfoot and turn a simple afternoon walk into a genuine health risk. And yet, in the very same country, during the very same season, other communities were shivering through temperatures that felt more like the dead of winter. This is the story of America's wild summer of extremes, the searing highs, the surprising lows, and the strange atmospheric forces pulling the country in two directions at once. Let's start where the heat has been most relentless, the desert Southwest. This summer brought wave after wave of dangerous, prolonged heat to Arizona, Nevada, and California, driven by a stubborn ridge of high pressure that meteorologists often describe as a heat dome. Phoenix, a city that has grown almost numb to triple-digit summers, still found new ways to shock its residents. Temperatures there pushed past 115 degrees earlier in the season than ever recorded in the city's history, a milestone that immediately raised alarms among climate scientists and public health officials alike. Just weeks later, the same high-pressure system intensified even further, setting readings across the region soaring past 120 degrees, a threshold that turns outdoor activity from uncomfortable into outright dangerous within minutes. Las Vegas told a similar story. The city, known worldwide for its scorching desert climate, recorded some of the earliest extreme heat readings in its history this year, with temperatures reaching 112 degrees far earlier, in the season than typical patterns would suggest. As the summer progressed, the heat only intensified, pushing Las Vegas toward numbers that challenged decades-old records and left emergency rooms bracing for a surge in heat-related illness. But if there is one place that defines extreme heat in the American imagination, it is Death Valley. This otherworldly basin in eastern California already holds the record for the highest temperature ever reliably recorded on Earth, a staggering 134 degrees measured back in 1913. This year, Death Valley once again lived up to its reputation, with temperatures climbing to 130 degrees during one of the summer's most intense heat waves, edging uncomfortably close to that century-old world record. Later in the season, another reading in the park reached nearly 121 degrees, still astonishing by any normal standard, even if it fell short of the park's most extreme historical marks. What makes this summer particularly remarkable is not just the peak numbers, but how widespread and sustained the heat has been. According to data compiled from thousands of weather stations across the country, daily high temperature records were either matched or broken more than 1,000 times in June alone, with an even larger wave of over 1,400 daily records falling in July. This is not a single isolated heat wave passing through one region. It is a pattern of overlapping heat domes, one settling over the east and Midwest, another gripping the northern Rockies and plains, each pushing temperatures into territory that forecasters describe as historically significant. The East Coast has not been spared either. A historic heat dome settled over the eastern United States around the 4th of July holiday, shattering records from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia to the Jersey Shore. Washington recorded its warmest Independence Day on record, with temperatures reaching 103 degrees. Philadelphia experienced 3 consecutive days above 101 degrees for the first time in its recorded history. Atlantic City, New Jersey matched its all-time hottest temperature ever recorded, hitting 106 degrees, a number more commonly associated with the deserts of the Southwest than the boardwalks of the Jersey Shore. Even Montana, a state better known for brutal winters than blistering summers, found itself in the grip of extraordinary heat this year. More than 130 daily heat records fell across the state during a mid-July heat dome, with one station reaching 116 degrees, landing within a single degree of the state's all-time record high. For a state where triple-digit heat is unusual even in peak summer, numbers like this represent a genuinely historic event. And if stories like this one are helping you understand what is really happening with our planet's weather, do not forget to like and subscribe, so you never miss the next deep dive. So what is driving all of this heat? Much of the answer traces back to a powerful climate pattern developing in the Pacific Ocean this year, a rapidly strengthening El Niño. Forecasters have described this as a potential super El Niño, with sea surface temperatures in the tropical Pacific reaching levels not seen in years. El Niño tends to reshape atmospheric circulation across the globe, and this year's especially strong version has been linked directly to the persistent heat dome patterns, locking dangerous temperatures in place across large portions of the country for weeks at a time. Rather than heat waves passing through quickly, this pattern has trapped warm air in place, allowing temperatures to build day after day with little relief. Now, for the other half of this story, because while the headlines this summer focused overwhelmingly on record heat, America's weather this year has been a study in contrasts. Just months before this relentless summer heat took hold, the country experienced one of its more significant early-year cold events. In the opening weeks of meteorological spring, dozens of communities across the northern United States were hit with temperatures rarely seen outside the deepest parts of winter. Historic lows were either matched or broken more than 90 times across the country in a single week, with temperatures plunging as low as negative 50 degrees in parts of Alaska. Even in the lower 48, sub-zero readings shattered decades-old daily records, stretching from Minnesota all the way to New England. That whiplash between extreme cold in early spring and extreme heat by summer is itself part of the story meteorologists are watching closely. A strengthening El Niño does not just influence summer heat domes, it also plays a role in reshaping winter and early spring storm tracks, sometimes amplifying the very cold snaps that arrive before the warm season fully takes hold. The same enormous atmospheric engine responsible for baking Phoenix and Las Vegas this summer was, just months earlier, contributing to bitter cold outbreaks that caught many communities off guard. Even during the depths of this summer's most intense heat, pockets of unusual coolness persisted in specific corners of the country. Coastal cities like San Francisco, insulated by cold ocean currents and consistent marine layers, continue to see summer temperatures barely climbing above 60 degrees on many days, a striking contrast to the desert heat scorching much of the rest of the nation at the very same time. High elevation locations told a similar story, with mountain regions experiencing summer nights that dipped into conditions more typical of early autumn, even as lowland deserts baked under triple-digit afternoon highs. This geographic split, blistering heat in the deserts and interior plains, persistent coolness along parts of the immediate coastline, and at high elevation, illustrates just how varied and complex American weather has become this year. It is not simply a hotter summer across the board. It is a summer defined by sharper contrasts, more extreme highs, more unusual lows depending on location, and increasingly volatile swings between the two. Public health officials have taken this summer's extremes seriously, and for good reason. Heat remains one of the deadliest weather hazards in the United States, often causing more fatalities annually than hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods combined. Emergency departments across multiple states reported sharp increases in heat-related visits during the worst stretches of this summer's heat domes, with hundreds of cases reported in the Pacific Northwest alone during just a few days of extreme temperatures. Officials have repeatedly urged residents in affected areas to stay hydrated, avoid outdoor activity during peak afternoon hours, and check on elderly neighbors and family members who remain especially vulnerable during prolonged heat events. Looking ahead, forecasters expect this pattern of extremes to continue playing out through the rest of the year, with El Niño projected to strengthen further into the fall. And winter months? Meteorologists are watching closely to see whether this summer's record heat gives way to another round of unusual winter extremes, continuing the whiplash pattern that has defined this year's weather from the very beginning. Whatever happens next, this summer has already secured its place among the most extreme and record-heavy seasons in modern American weather history, a season that pushed Death Valley to the edge of its own century-old world record, forced Phoenix and Las Vegas into uncharted territory, and reminded every corner of the country, hot or cold, coastal or inland, just how powerful and unpredictable our atmosphere can truly be. From the scorched pavement of Phoenix to the quiet, fog-cooled streets of San Francisco, from the record-breaking chill OF in Alaskan spring to the suffocating heat of a Death Valley afternoon, this year has shown America the full spectrum of what its climate is capable of producing. 121 degrees is not just a number on a thermometer. It is a symbol of a summer that pushed the boundaries of what many thought possible, and a reminder that the extremes on both ends of the scale are becoming harder to ignore with each passing year. Part of what makes these extremes so striking is how quickly they can arrive in a single location. Weather stations across the Southwest recorded temperature swings of 20 degrees or more within just a few days, as high-pressure systems built and then briefly weakened before rebuilding even stronger. Meteorologists tracking these patterns describe them less as isolated heat waves and more as extended heat events, periods where the atmosphere essentially locks into a configuration that keeps the same hot air mass parked over the same region for a week or more at a time. That persistence is part of what makes this year's heat so dangerous, since the human body and the electrical grid alike struggle far more with sustained extreme heat than with a single scorching afternoon followed by relief. The infrastructure strain from a summer like this reaches well beyond hospitals and emergency rooms. Utility companies across the Southwest reported record electricity demand as air conditioning units ran non-stop for days at a time, pushing power grids close to their operational limits during the hottest stretches of the season. Road surfaces buckled under the heat in several states, including a notable incident in Salt Lake City, where an interstate on-ramp deformed under extreme temperatures. Airlines in Phoenix and Las Vegas occasionally had to adjust flight schedules as well. Since extremely hot, thin AIR can reduce the lift certain aircraft need for safe takeoff, forcing weight restrictions or delayed departures during the most extreme afternoon hours. Meanwhile, the cold extremes recorded earlier this year carried their own set of consequences. The early spring cold snap that swept through the northern United States arrived after weeks of unusually mild weather, catching many communities without adequate preparation. Water pipes froze in areas unaccustomed to hard freezes. So late in the season, agricultural producers scrambled to protect budding crops from unexpected frost damage, and utility providers in several northern states saw brief spikes in heating. Demand that mirrored, in miniature, the same kind of grid strain now being seen during this summer's extreme heat. Climate researchers studying this year's data are quick to note that no single summer or spring season can be attributed entirely to any one cause. Natural variability, ocean cycles like El Niño, and longer-term warming trends all interact in complex ways that make each year's weather a unique combination of forces. What researchers can say with more confidence is that the range between hot and cold extremes appears to be widening in many parts of the country, with daily records on both ends of the thermometer falling more frequently than they did decades ago. Whether this particular summer ultimately ranks among the hottest ever recorded for the country as a whole will not be fully confirmed until the season's final data is compiled and reviewed by national climate agencies in the coming months. For now, the story of this year's weather remains one of extremes meeting extremes. A desert basin approaching its own century-old heat record, cities from the mid-Atlantic to the Pacific Northwest breaking marks that had stood for generations, and communities in the north still remembering the bitter cold that gripped them just months before the heat arrived. It is a reminder that America's weather, stretching across deserts, coastlines, mountains, and plains, rarely tells a single simple story. This year, more than most, it has told two stories at once, written in the same summer under the same sky, just a few thousand miles apart.